A very interesting and revealing article from yesterday's New York Times titled Mixed Signals from Trump Worry Pro Israel Hardliners. And the article, in a nutshell, is Trump is receiving different signals and different perspectives on what his Israel policy should be from two very powerful American Republican Jewish Zionists. One is Sheldon Adelson, who I'm sure everybody here who's listening to this knows who Sheldon Adelson is, the GOP kingmaker who has spoken about preemptively nuking Iran, and who all the GOP politicians are beholden to. They go to kiss his ring and try to get his money and his endorsements. Ronald Lauder is the other one, and Ronald Lauder is not, I think, is much less well known than Sheldon Adelson is, but nonetheless is an extremely important player within global politics, global Zionism. Ronald Lauder is the head of the World Jewish Congress. Ronald Lauder's had a long-time friendship with Trump that's gone on for decades, and Lauder and Trump went to the University of Pennsylvania Business School together. Lauder's mother, Estee Lauder, was, of course, the namesake for the empire, the fragrance fashion empire, Estee Lauder. Did a lot of business with Trump and was one of Trump's closest associates when he was in the old days as a real estate developer in Manhattan and all that. So Lauder and Trump go back a long way. It was Ronald Lauder who Donald Trump went out of his way to praise during his speech marking Israel's Holocaust Remembrance Day. There was the big uproar about him not mentioning Jews during the global Holocaust Remembrance Day, but during the Israeli Holocaust Remembrance Day, he went out of his way to praise Ronald Lauder for his friendship and for predicting before most people that Trump would win the election. So there's a split here, and it seems that the major disagreement between Lauder and Adelson is that Ronald Lauder believes that Donald Trump should work with Palestinian Authority head Mahmoud Abbas, and Sheldon Adelson does not believe he should. And these differences of opinion have been expressed. That Ronald Lauder has a frequently in contact with Jason Greenblatt, who I believe is Trump's negotiator for Mideast affairs. The Orthodox bankruptcy lawyer, or one of Trump's top lawyers. David Friedman's the bankruptcy lawyer who's the ambassador to Israel, another hardliner. And Lauder has been encouraging Greenblatt, and I guess he's also been in Trump's ear about perhaps trying to get a deal of some sorts going with Abbas. And the Adelson wing is against this, and they've been pushing back. Couple of what I got from this article, though, is very noticeable. First of all, it's got to be made very clear both Adelson and Lauder are very hawkish when it comes to Israel, and both of them are vehemently opposed to the Iran nuclear deal. They're both very hawkish on Iran and the need for Iran to be stopped. However, they want to stop Iran from a non-existent nuclear threat. They're both 100% in lockstep on that. And to me, this looks like it's just a difference in strategy rather than an actual, some sort of sign that Donald Trump is a maverick, like some people are going to try to make him out to be. And some people still delusionally have this impression that Donald Trump's this maverick who's going to somehow buck the Zionist trend if only he listens to the right people and gets Jared and Ivanka out of there, so he can only have the good Catholic boy Steve Bannon, who only wants to start a new crusade against Islam. Much like what we had 1,000 years ago, fighting for control of Jerusalem and to take back the Holy Land and all that. I mean, that kind of delusion. But this looks to me, I don't know how big it is in terms of a policy shift, but I don't think this should be looked at like in terms of policy difference. I don't think it should be looked at as very significant. To me, it doesn't seem like it's very significant on the surface. I mean, because it's been well established within Palestinian circles that Abbas is not considered to be a friend of the actual Palestinian cause, that he is very much, that he's given a lot of, that he is closer with the Israeli occupiers that he should be, and all of that. So I mean, the idea of forging an alliance with Abbas or some sort is not this radical move, simply because Abbas is not really, he's not really opposed in any major way to the Israeli regime. And also, it seems like it's just a difference in policy where one side, where strategically perhaps Lauder thinks that working with Abbas would be a positive for their overall Mideast policy, whereas I guess Adelson sees it as a negative. And interestingly enough, Abbas was just meeting with Putin, and Ronald Lauder is, much like with Donald Trump, Ronald Lauder is one of Putin's bigger champions in the global Jewish establishment. I mean, Lauder has been very defensive of Putin as well as Trump, and we've talked, Jeremy and I on a couple of occasions have talked about the very underreported element of all of the controversy with Vladimir Putin in Russia, that Putin, much like Trump, is very close to the elements, hot people within the Chabad Lubavitch community of hardcore Orthodox Zionists, who, you know, they're some of the most religious of the religious Zionists, of the, you know, some of the more overtly religious Zionists, who very much take a lot of the, you know, the Talmudic type laws literally and all that. And Trump and Putin are both very close, so it's interesting that Abbas was meeting with Lauder and Greenblatt, and that Lauder is urging Trump to forge an alliance with Abbas, and then Abbas meets with Putin. That doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it's interesting nonetheless. And so I don't see this as being a major shift of any sort, or a major like policy difference of any sort. I think it's more of like a strategic thing. But the two things to me that really, other than the Iran thing, that really sticks out to me about this, number one is, to me, this has to completely shatter any sort of myth that Donald Trump is somehow, as I said a few minutes ago, is somehow this maverick who's trying to reign in the Zionist state or the Jewish state, and trying to reign in the you know, global Jewish Zionist organized power as far as Zionism and control of the state of Israel goes, and, you know, and all this stuff that has to do with disproportionate influence over global media and politics and economics. Nothing of the sort. I mean, look at Ronald Lauder and you look at Sheldon Adelson. This is simply a battle between two people who are two of the more right-wing Zionists, as far as two of the more hawkish Zionists, and they're simply, they want to be the one to, they want Trump to listen to them, but there's really not much of a major difference in their policy. I mean, they're both hardcore hawkish, and every person quoted in this article, whether it's Republican Jewish Coalition head of the Republican Jewish Committee, I believe his name is Brooks, or these other commentators, they're all saying that there seems to be unanimous agreement among these analysts that Donald Trump is going to be significantly better than Barack Obama on Israel. Yet all we continue to hear talking about is how Obama was the Zionist puppet and Trump is the maverick. Yet all of these people say Trump is better for Israel and better for, you know, Zionism and better for the Jewish state than Obama could ever dream of being. So I don't get where this idea that Trump the maverick is going to rein them in somehow is coming from, when clearly you've got different elements fighting for control of Trump and fighting to control his what he does and what he says. It's no different than how Trump is being, how there's a split within the neocon hawk, you know, war on terror hawk community, where one side is sees that Russia, having an alliance with Russia is good to actually fight the war on terror, whereas the other side, which is the Bill Kristol Weekly Standard wing, which was the which led the Never Trump movement within the GOP, see Russia as they're with the American neoliberal consensus that Russia is the major enemy and that we shouldn't be forging any sort of alliance with Putin and that Assad needs to go and that all this. So that's not even a shift in terms of any sort of being like an example that Trump is somehow less hawkish, because the major difference is that some of these people that are on the Trump side, like the Breitbart wing, only think that building an alliance with Russia would actually help fight the war on terror. They're not advocating any sort of like major shift to where we actually like de-escalate this war on terror, because they're the ones that are the most out there pushing the imminent threat of Islamist terrorism and being an imminent threat to our civilization, to our way of life and all that. But they just simply disagree about Russia, I think. And there may be a few more disagreements in there, but you look at their policy on Iran, you look at their policy on Israel itself, and there's really not any sort of difference. And this really needs to be emphasized that, much like that, what Ronald Lauder and Sheldon Adelson are trying to do by winning the influence of Trump, it's not a major shift, because the status quo is going to stay in place regardless of whether Trump and the people around him listen to Sheldon Adelson or listen to Ronald Lauder. And very clear, Trump is just, there are two sides of the Zio Mafia that are fighting to influence Trump, and one is from the New York business community, Ronald Lauder, who's been his lifelong friend, who also, very interesting, has a very underreported potential role in the September 11th complicity, as he was one of the people who helped oversee the privatization efforts in New York, New Jersey, around the time that the World Trade Center property was given to Larry Silverstein. So there's a connection there that has potentially gone very unnoticed with Ronald Lauder in the September 11th attacks. And Adelson, on the other hand, is the big kingmaker, the mob guy, who has gone on record at, I believe, the Republican Jewish Coalition dinner, saying that Donald Trump will be the best president that Israel's ever had. And honestly, when these people say this kind of stuff, I take it at face value. And nobody in the right wing, you won't hear David Duke or Richard Spencer or the Daily Stormer or even Alex Jones or what I call the philo-Zionist media rather than philo-Semitic support base that Donald Trump has. None of these people are talking about this. Ronald Lauder doesn't exist in their bubble because it doesn't fit their narrative. And, Sheldon Adelson only fits in their bubble when they're talking about how Adelson only reluctantly gave him a couple of $1 million before the election. So, and Adelson gave Trump the, $5 million for the inauguration, the most that a president's ever been given for an inauguration. But, people will look at the reports that Adelson is allegedly upset that Trump hasn't moved the embassy yet as proof. See, Trump's a maverick. Trump's a maverick. He's just playing 40-dimensional chess with these people. Don't take anything they ever say seriously, because they're obviously just playing around. It's all a big game. Trump and Putin and Assad are all in on a big scheme to bring down the Jewish state. All this whatever. It completely flies in the face of any evidence or reality, for that matter, whatsoever. So that's one of the things that stuck out to me from this article, is this to me shatters the myth that Donald Trump is somehow not a pawn or a puppet or a servant or a whatever you want to call it of global Jewish Zionist power. Considering that the two people that are fighting for his influence, who he listens to, are two of the most powerful of the Jewish Zionists globally. So the other thing I got from this is that in the article it's mentioned that Steve Bannon frequently consults with Sheldon Adelson about Israel policy, and that Bannon is promoting the Adelson line to within the administration. Now, this is interesting because Bannon's supposed to be, according to all these alt-righters, Bannon's the guy who's fighting the globalist, evil Kushner's globalist Zionist plan to infiltrate the Trump administration and make Donald Trump a puppet or whatever. And yet Bannon, of course, as we've talked about, was ran Breitbart, which is more pro-Israel than most media is, even neocon media, bragged about being conceived in Israel, set up under his leadership at Breitbart, a Jerusalem wing, publishes probably right up there one of the two or three biggest websites that are pushing the anti-Muslim narrative, the Clash of Civilizations narrative. So Bannon is let off the hook almost entirely by the entire right-wing pro-Trump movement, and yet here in this article is talked about how Bannon and Adelson are meeting closely. Bannon just had the selfie with Rabbi Boteach at the White House, where Boteach talks about how great of a friend of Israel he is and how he wants to stop Iran's nuclear program and how he's a warrior for Zionism and a stalwart friend of Israel and the Jewish people and the Jewish state. And Bannon's meeting with Adelson, and Adelson is the guy he wants the embassy moved right away. He wants the settlements. He wants the increased settlements. He's probably one of the more hawkish people within the Jewish Zionist establishment that wants increased settlement building. And Bannon is consulting with Adelson and pushing what Adelson wants within the administration. So the two things I got from this article are, number one, Trump's listening to, the people he's listening to are some of the most hardcore Zionists. People who Barack Obama did not listen to, by the way. People who Hillary Clinton would not have listened to. Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama would not have been listening to people nearly this hawkish. Now, they would have been listening to, bad people who just want to uphold the status quo as far as Israel goes, obviously. And they wouldn't have, they would have kept the special relationship going, but they wouldn't have been this hawkish. Hillary Clinton would not have appointed David Friedman, a hardline supporter of settlement building, as the ambassador to Israel. She wouldn't be having Sheldon Adelson in her ear telling her what policy she should be pushing with regards to Israel-Palestine, pushing her to move the embassy and to increase the settlement building. She wouldn't have Ronald Lauder in her ear either. So, this completely shatters the myth to me that Donald Trump is a maverick, and it also shatters the myth that Steve Bannon is a maverick. And it's time for people to really understand this and stop making excuses for Trump. Stop blaming Jared Kushner. Stop blaming Ivanka for everything. Stop bringing up how, would you rather have had Hillary in there? Stop bringing up Hillary Clinton. Stop talking about Jared and Ivanka as the source of all of Trump's problems, and come to the understanding that Donald Trump never intended to drain the swamp. He never intended to make America great again. He has always been a pawn. He has been a made man for many decades within the, as he has some of his best friends like Ronald Lauder are some of the most powerful Jewish Zionist mafia and business figures in the world. So let's drop this narrative that Trump is the maverick who's going to somehow rein them in if only he'd listen to the right people. Because very clearly, folks, Steve Bannon is not the right people. So until next time, just think critically about this stuff, and don't listen to what the Trump shills tell you. Think for yourself on this, and realize that Trump is really, at the end of the day, no different than whatever else we would have gotten. And in some ways, it's even worse because no one else would have the kind of support from within the alternative community that Donald Trump has. So, I'm out.